Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Aronnax podcast, the show that focuses on the transformation of the maritime and ocean space. I'm Craig Eason, editorial director of Fathom.World, where the stories we cover on the podcast will be found with additional detail. So, a quick plug, visit the Fathom.World website and subscribe to the newsletter if you've not already done so. And also look on your chosen podcast app and follow, like and subscribe this podcast and let me know what you think. Now, everyone around the world, whether involved in a maritime or ocean industry or not, will know that COP26, the 26th meeting of the Conference of Parties of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, will meet in Glasgow. And the expectations are high for nations to up their game and show more commitment to meet the temperature targets of the Paris Agreement. This commitment will be in the form of nationally determined contributions. Shipping, so far at least, does not factor in them. The goal of decarbonising international shipping is still being left to the representatives of the member states who attend the International Maritime Organisation's environmental meetings. The IMO, of course, being another UN agency, just like the UNFCCC. However, that does not mean that there will be no place for shipping at COP26. In fact, shipping has been represented either by the IMO or industry players at earlier COP meetings, and Glasgow is no different. So now, let me introduce my guest for this episode, Catherine Palmer. Catherine is our industry's official climate champion. Her full-time role is actually at the UK-based classification society Lloyd's Register, but they, or rather the Lloyd's Register Foundation, has lent her out on secondment to the UN high-level champions team to be their shipping lead. So, hello Catherine, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. And I suppose my first question has got to be, what is your role and what are you going to be trying to achieve when you go to Glasgow?
Thank you very much, Craig. Interesting questions to start off with. So I think I'll start with explaining what the role of the UN high-level climate champions team is. The role is running a campaign to mobilise non-state actor commitments. And this is the largest campaign that is going. There's about 4,500 members at the moment, and it's called the Race to Zero. And as I said, it focuses on non-state actor. So that is businesses, organisations, cities, regions. And so it really focuses on those actors that also have a vital role to play in achieving zero, and that's really the focus. So with that in mind, what is it that we'll be focusing on at COP26? It is about announcing those breakthroughs from the non-state actor part of the ecosystem. My role focuses on the shipping system, and I have counterparts that look at other system transformations that are needed in other industrial sectors, in cities and regions. And so there'll be a lot of activity from the champions team across the 2 weeks. And as you're aware, the presidency has set out the themes for each day. And so we have Transport Day on the 10th of November. So that covers all modes of transport. So my colleagues in road transport and aviation and myself in shipping will be showcasing and announcing the breakthroughs from the non-state actors that have been made towards achieving the race to zero. So we have set out in partnership with the Marrakesh Partnership, the climate action pathways that are updated pretty much annually. And the transport climate action pathway sets out the system transformation that is needed for the different transport sectors. So for shipping, we look at 5 different change levers, that being technology and supply, demand, finance, policy, and civil society action. And we have set out 2030 breakthroughs for the shipping system, and that is, the breakthrough is a 5% zero emission fuels in international shipping and 15% zero emission fuels in domestic shipping by 2030. So as I said, our campaign then focuses on achieving these 2030 breakthrough targets, which then set shipping on course for zero by 2050. So Transport Day will be a very busy day where we will aim to be announcing and launching some of the breakthrough actions and initiatives that the non-state actors have been taking to work towards achieving this 2030 target. So that's really what we will focus on. And I think one of the main objectives that the shipping industry wants to get from COP26 is really focused on the increased ambition. So increased ambition, resilience, mobilized finance, and system collaboration, sort of operationalizing effort to deliver system change are the main goals of COP26. And so when we look at those for shipping, it's really about getting increased ambition, so from member states at COP, and hope that increased ambition from COP26 then plays out in the IMO negotiations, which pick up again at MEPC 77 a week later. So focus is increased ambition and resilience, and making sure that there is recognition of a fair and just transition in that increased ambition. And then obviously we will be highlighting system collaboration and how we're operationalizing effort to achieve the 5% goal in 2030.
There's a lot of work that's going on both within the United Nations, the UNFCCC, on the NDCs, and there's a lot of work at the IMO. How do you see the discussions that are going to happen at UNFCCC influencing what's going on at the IMO? Because I'm aware, and it's a criticism I've heard before, and I can understand this. What the states, the government, the member parties commit to at a COP meeting are sometimes not reflected by their delegations that go to one of the IMO's environmental committees. There seems to be sometimes a disconnect between what a country may say at a UNFCCC meeting and what it may say at the IMO or for aviation at ICAO. There seems to be a disconnect there.
I think, like you said, many people might have noticed disconnects at that level. But I think if we look back to when the Paris Agreement was put together, we saw in the first IMO MEPC meeting following that spirit of collaboration and ambition and commitment from member states was brought into the IMO negotiation and the IMO platform. And therefore, we got the initial greenhouse gas strategy at the IMO very quickly off the back of the Paris Agreement in the spirit of that ambition and collaboration from Paris. Though I think, this COP is about increased ambition, and I think that in the spirit of what it will be achieved at COP26, I think many member states will be bringing that into IMO. So hopefully we can bridge any gap that might have started to appear.
Your role over this period, because your role as the climate champion for shipping isn't just for COP26. It's you're not here just to go to Glasgow. It's a role that will span a number of months. I'm aware also, I didn't know this until I looked into this. You're not the first person to be a shipping climate champion. It's a baton that you took over from somebody else, but you're the first one that I've come across that's got a much more kind of higher profile, has been appointed directly before one of the most important COP meetings and one of the most important IMO environmental meetings that this industry or society has seen. So how do you see your role after COP?
I think, as you said, I'm not the first shipping lead, and I won't be the last. And someone else will come in and take I hand the baton over, like the baton was given to me. And it's very much, like I said, built around our system transformation thinking and the action, the opportunity and action that is needed in these different change levers to drive the sector to achieve the 2030 breakthrough target. So we're all working, wherever the champion comes in, they're all working towards mobilizing and the non-state actors to achieving these targets. So that is set out in the climate action pathway. And I reckon, and maybe, the familiarity of that with the shipping sector probably needs to be increased, because if we can all unite around a shared plan of what needs to happen to achieve that, we're all in this together, and therefore we're all working towards the same goal. And I think that's what we've tried to put out with the breakthrough targets, with the climate action pathways, with the action table that is needed, setting out those milestones of what's needed, by 2023, what's needed by 2025, what's needed by 2030, by the different actors. So sort of saying, so it's clear what the actors need to do and by when. And if we can all unite around this plan, then that really is, if shipping can achieve 5% zero emission fuels by 2030, that is a significant breakthrough that will really set shipping on track. And so my work as a champion, my predecessors and my successor, is really going to be about mobilizing action with these different actors to make these commitments and actions to deliver. So we're all working in the same, along the same lines, within the same framework and with the same plan. So it's very, I think one thing I would say that I've observed since coming in post has this climate action pathway and the system transformation is that landed within the sector, and I think that's why it's really important that we land that and everyone unites around one master plan.
Do you think there is more unity around that yet? Are you seeing that happen? I see a lot of discussion and a lot of almost arguments about owning the definition, even of decarbonisation and net zero and different fuels. Do you find that there is work going on to be more collaborative and working together, or do you find there's still too much going on in terms of trying to claim some ground for oneself before we take the discussion further?
I think as with anything, there was some terminology, that the sector needs to coalesce around, like you said, that to get a shared common understanding of terms like net zero or zero. What does that mean? And so people are talking a kind of consistent language. And I think there might be some slight discrepancies amongst various groups, but I think, I think there's a lot of alignment across those groups as well. So I think there's much, and I think there is a significant amount of collaboration and cooperation going on, whether that is across value chains or whether that is public-private collaboration and partnerships as well. So I think there's a lot happening, and I think there are, sort of initial efforts are being made, and I think that's set out in, the accompanying report to the Getting to Zero Coalition call to action sets out the commitments that the signatories to the call to action are making. There's also evidence around the number of pilot projects that the shipping industry is engaged in, and that's evident in the Next Gen portal that the IMO MPA launched, and also again in the Getting to Zero Coalition mapping of pilot projects. So I think there's a lot of this effort is being undertaken, but now, how do we share the learnings from these efforts, and so everyone can benefit from,
that's been one of the things,
effort that is being taken.
I know, because that's one of the things that I've seen as well, is there's a lot of commercial entities that are involved in these projects, so they will have their commercial sensitivities at the forefront of their thinking. So IP rights and have a commercial return on their investment in projects will be at the forefront of their minds. But do you think that naturally goes hand in hand with achieving the goals that you're trying to promote in terms of an industry sector-wide decarbonisation or awareness of decarbonisation, particularly when you're talking about speeding up the process?
I think what I would say is what I've seen lately is that a fair and just and equitable transition is becoming much more at the forefront and front and centre of shipping's dialogue around the transformation that's needed. As you probably mentioned, in the past, we very much focused on technology So the dialogue has been very technocentric. And I think now the dialogue is becoming much more, it's not just focused on technology. We're bringing in investment, we're bringing in civil society, we're bringing in the needs of the SIDS and LDCs. So, and I think that's where the focus will be going forward, is making sure that the dialogue, the just and fair and equitable transition, is front and center of the dialogue and not an additional afterthought. And I think by bringing that in, this whole piece of we're doing this for commercial advantage, as you just implied.
Do you think that will disappear over a while, or do you think it'll become a secondary? They will realise perhaps that there is the commercial advantage of this collaborative approach.
I think it's secondary. I think it's and I wouldn't say that it is the focus. For anyone businesses who want to be around in 10 years time, 20 years time, that we need to be crystallizing ambition and turning that ambition into commitment and action. But everyone is in this together, and no one person can do this alone. And so we need to operationalize our efforts, and we need to collaborate and all come together and work in the same direction. And then I think, the business success is secondary and will happen. I think we are in the stage of the transition at the moment, if we look at the shape of the curve and where are we, we're very early on. And so really it is about collaboration.
But that collaboration doesn't just, you implied it earlier on in our interview, it isn't just around collaboration within the shipping sector, within the technology companies, looking for platforms to test new technologies. It's about a collaborative kind of cross-system approach. And we've seen work with the financing, with the Poseidon Principles. We've seen the Sea Cargo Charter. We've seen how industry has begun to connect with other aspects of the whole chain, if you like. And you mentioned it earlier on about you and other climate champions within other sectors. Is part of your job to create the awareness of the shipping sector with the other sectors, with the other champions that you have there, to try and coalesce and speed up how they could be an engagement for positive change within the shipping sector? I'm here thinking, because we've got the cargo owners, we've got the freight owners who are beginning to take more interest in what they want in their transport chains. Do you think that we are likely to see that awareness putting increased pressure on the shipping sector?
Yes, I think in the champions team, we all work together because there are those opportunities of cross. I don't know whether it's cross collaboration, cross fertilization of the activities and initiatives that are taking place in one sector can help with another. So that happens. But yes, you're right that the interconnectedness of shipping as a sector with communities, with cities, with regions, with countries, with other industrial sectors, that enables it to be a good kind of first mover when you're looking at decarbonisation of other sectors. Shipping is a good quality demand sector for unlocking some of the green hydrogen opportunities. I said from its connectedness with communities and workforces both on shore and on land, it has that opportunity to look at green skills and upskilling and reskilling in the maritime workforce. So I think the connectedness of the sector just by its nature, that's why we talk about these different change levers, and they're across the whole value chain, whether they are supply of energy through to end consumer of shipping services.
So there's all these different pressures that are being placed, or increasingly going to be placed, onto the shipping sector as well. But given the pressure that is now on society, the UN Secretary General recently said code red, and last week he expressed a direct opinion at an international transport conference, he expressed an opinion that the goals so far, the targets that the IMO and ICAO are going for, are not aligned with the goals of the Paris Agreement. They're above 3 degrees warming, not the less than 1.5 degrees warming written into the Paris Agreement. There was also an event I listened to recently from one of the Transport and Environment, one of the lobby groups that pushed the proposal that the Paris Agreement actually does not give the IMO and ICAO exclusively the right to, or the job of, decarbonising international shipping. And in fact, it's up to member states that they should be looking at shipping as part of their NDCs. Do you think that kind of pressure is going to be a positive pressure that will bring about increased activity, increase in the goals that the IMO is going to seek? Or do you think it's going to muddy the waters somewhat, and that shipping should be left with the IMO, basically?
I think it's not an either-or choice between national, regional action and international. I think there's a combination of effort that is needed. And I said, if we look where we are today in shipping's transition, yes, we need a clear, unambiguous target for the shipping sector. And I think that is what we want to achieve from COP, around this increased ambition and a clear, unambiguous target that is given through the IMO. And so that then can set the direction of travel and provides that certainty for private sector and to mobilize its action, knowing that it's got clarity on the direction of travel. So first of all, we do need that unambiguous target, and we do need effective and meaningful policy measures, in place. But then at the same time, we also need to incentivize first movers, and we do need to have large-scale demonstration projects taking place. And, action to get those might be incentivized nationally or, sort of regionally or, sort of bilaterally between two different countries. And so it's a combination of action that is needed, some at the international level and some at the national level, because also if we get national commitment to decarbonize domestic shipping, again, it's any learnings that can then be transferred to international shipping. Like I said, we might have two countries come together to look at decarbonizing certain routes, but as a first mover to prove technology, then we need that action that can take place outside of the IMO. So I think it's about putting together that combination of effort and not just relying on everything to be done at an international level from day one.
Catherine Palmer, shipping's appointed climate champion, talking to me about the expectations she has for COP26 and how it could influence the discussions at the IMO's MEPC, the Marine Environment Protection Committee. I'll hope to talk to her again, perhaps in the new year, after COP26 and MEPC 77, and I believe a well-earned rest on her part. Hopefully to get her opinions of the decisions that have come from the policymakers in the meantime. Now, we've not heard from him for a while, but here's Nick Chubb from Theteus for his thoughts on the latest startup and technology news.
Thanks, Craig. This week, we launched our latest State of Digital Transformation report, which focuses on the impact of the pandemic on the maritime technology sector. Some of the key findings from the report include that average daily data consumption per vessel increased from 3.4 gigabytes to 9.8 gigabytes between Jan 2020 and March 2021. 2021 also saw a post-pandemic bump in the adoption of digital technologies across the industry. We're forecasting that the sector will be 3 years ahead of pre-pandemic forecasts by the end of next year. Projecting ahead to 2030, the global maritime digital technology industry is now forecast to be worth $345 billion worldwide. In other news, Maersk Growth, the venture arm of the world's largest container carrier, has made an investment in Prometheus Fuels, a Silicon Valley-based startup that uses direct air capture technology to enable carbon-neutral fuels for shipping. Maritime intelligence platform Greywing has raised $2.5 million to continue its ambition to help ship owners and other members of the maritime community to make better critical decisions. Greywing's platform includes tools for crew change management, predictive reporting of potential risks like piracy and pandemic-related travel restriction updates. Alongside the raise, which included Y Combinator, Flexport, Signal Group and Motion Ventures as investors, Greywing announced the launch of a new solution that will help vessel operators to track carbon emissions created by crew changes. Finally this week, bunkering procurement startup Beluga and connectivity startup Fathom announced a new partnership. Under the agreement, existing customers of both companies will now have access to Beluga's online bunker fuel and lubricants platform on board the vessel. The plan aims to bring e-procurement directly to remote customers who are on the ship, simplifying the traditional marine fuel and lubricant sourcing process.
Nick Chubb from Thetis ending this episode of the Aronnax podcast. And remember, please subscribe and like this podcast. Let me know what you think. Visit the Fathom.World website where you can read other stories on these topics as well as subscribe to our newsletter. And I'll be back soon with a new episode of the Aronnax podcast in the next week or two. Until then, goodbye.